If you are into having the best and the latest, then there's something you should know about Shimano's best cross-country shoe. It has received a few nice updates. Now, we want to be clear. Before we tell you about these updates, if you have the previous version S-Fire, you are fine.
I think you just described me, Hottie. I can personally say that you will, in fact, be fine. I've been wearing the S-Fire since their most recent update in 2021, and they are great. I am a real masher. Anyone who's ever seen me climb any hill knows that. I love pushing against a stiff sole, and that is what the S-Fire has and will continue to have.
Okay, now for the updates. They look and feel pretty much the same. 2 boas and a toe box that widens just in front of the boa lacing. The sole is pretty much the same. Shimano's going for a little more ventilation now, though, by adding a layer of mesh under those laces. There are also micro perforations around the front and sides where before there were panels. Combined, this should help working feet shed some heat.
Like I said, I like stiff, and the S-Fire rates 11 out of 12 on the Shimano stiffness scale. Hottie, I've got a lot of new stuff in store for this year's Leadville 100. I don't know if I need to add a pair of shoes to that, but that shouldn't stop our listeners. Now, since the new S-Fires look so close to the previous model, when you buy, make sure you get the S-Fire model SHXC903. That's the new one. To see the 3 colors and all the features, go to bike.shimano.com. And thanks so much to Shimano for being the title sponsor of this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Shimano. It is season 7, episode 15 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
I'm Fatty, and I got to admit, Hottie, that 7 seasons into the show, I now measure how close we are to race day by how many episodes we've got left in the season. Episode 15 means we are deep into the middle of preparations for this incredible day.
And we've got lots to talk about in this episode.
And here comes Eldon Nelson. With 14 minutes to spare on that clock, the bragging rights and the heavy hardware. That's all you. Welcome back to your Leadville family and your finish line.
After a week off, we are back in the game with Fatty's finishing tips, and it's good to be back.
It sure is. And this episode, I want to talk about something I hinted at in our opening. We are 2 and change months away from the Leadville 100, which means it is time to start doing some dress rehearsals for the day. For the next couple episodes, my tips are going to focus on preparation you've either made or need to make in the near future if you want to have a good day on the course.
Yeah, 2 months seems like a lot of time, but there are a lot of choices that need to be tested for this race. We're getting to the point where racers ought to be beta testing their race day plans.
Yeah, that is actually a great way to put it, Hottie. And the best way to beta test your race day is to focus on one major feature at a time, if we're going to use the software metaphor. And I think we can agree that the single most important point of success or failure in this race is food. Knowing what and how much you're going to eat and drink before and during the race is truly crucial. And yet, in our beginning of season survey, we saw that more people had a bad day or just didn't finish because they had a bad stomach or a bonk than any other reason. And while I don't think that every food-related challenge can be resolved before the race, I think most of them actually can. And I think I've got a pretty good and simple system for doing it.
Yeah, so it sounds like we need a schematic here, some type of plan for the race.
It's really pretty simple. It's a dress rehearsal approach is what I do, Hottie. We are about 2 months out, and I start doing my long rides exactly how I'm going to be doing them on race day. Last weekend was actually my first eating dress rehearsal for the 2024 Leadville 100. And if you don't mind, I'd like to walk through what I did.
Sure thing, please.
Okay, so my plan was to do a 100-mile ride that day. This was going to be a road bike ride because I was testing how well my food plan worked over a long ride. I wasn't testing my climbing fitness. I wasn't testing my bike. I wasn't even testing my clothes. I'll fold all of those important parts of preparation into future rides. But for this one, I want to test just food. So I started the evening before by eating a very similar meal to what I might eat the evening before the Leadville 100. In my case, that's a very big and a simple pasta dish with an easy to digest protein I enjoy, like chicken or tofu.
Yeah, you're not necessarily saying that's what everyone should eat the night before the race. Just that's what's worked for you in the past, and you want to be consistent with how you eat before the race, not just during.
Yeah, exactly. Your eating plan for the race should include at least the day before the race, and you should be consistent, throughout your dress rehearsals. So the next thing I do is approach the morning the same way. I wake up at the same time. I'm going to get up on race day. I have coffee the same way, and I have my breakfast the same way. I mean, it sounds like I am being really like overly similar, but honestly, working this way makes it so you learn what works and what doesn't. For me, it's always just a scrambled egg burrito. I can't remember a time I've eaten that before a race and felt bad afterward. Then I'm eating some kind of high calorie, high carb bar a few minutes before we roll out the door, exactly like I do at the starting line on race day. I turn on the food alert chime on my Garmin the night before the race. So every 20 minutes, I am getting a notification that it is gel time.
Yeah, I'm figuring that goo Roctane will be in the pockets.
Yeah, I'm actually this year trying a wider variety of gels, Hottie, just sort of out of curiosity whether I do fine with more of a smorgasbord approach to gels. And as it turns out, it did work great for me. None of that old, I am sick of cherry lime reaction halfway through the day. I also experimented last weekend with loading my bottles with calories, which is kind of new for me. I didn't go crazy. I just ran Martin 160 in my bottles with a goo hydration tab thrown into the bottle as well for flavor. Just sort of doing kind of a mix and match thing. I'm a mad scientist now. And that was actually the revelation of the day for me. By doing this, I was sneaking an extra 160 calories on board every couple of hours, which I tolerated very well throughout the day, and learned that, over 6 hours, I can consume 100 grams of carbs per hour, and felt, just as good as with what I was eating 6 hours into it as I do during a 2-hour ride. My nutrition dress rehearsal was truly a really good success.
Yeah, 100 grams an hour is a great number. We're hearing the Keegan types taking 120 grams per hour, so your target there is beautifully done. But what if you hadn't felt good at the end of the day?
I would say that it would still be a success, because this is the end of May that I'm doing this, and I still have plenty of time to adjust my plan as I do more long weekends throughout June. I would try adjusting what I ate and, how much during my weekday rides, kind of get to something that feels good over a couple hours, and then use that during the big ride. By starting early, by starting a couple months before the race, you can get to a solution that works for you amazingly quickly. And the timing here is really the tip. If you haven't already started doing what I'm calling a dress rehearsal for your long rides, 5 or 6 hour long rides, where you're testing out your day before and your day of eating strategy, it is time to do so now. Pay attention to how you feel at the beginning of the ride, and more importantly, pay attention to how your energy and gut feel at the end of the ride, after 5 hours, after 6 hours. If you feel good throughout the day in your dress rehearsal, you can be pretty confident that you are going to be fine during the day of the race.
Hey, just like every aspect of this race, there should be no surprises or experiments on race day. You're executing what you've practiced, and now is the time to test and refine that strategy.
Yep, and figuring out what you're going to eat and then taking it through as many dress rehearsal iterations is what our partner at The Feed can help with. They've got practically every nutrition product, not to mention expert help if you don't know what to buy or what isn't working, why your stomach isn't feeling good or why you're bonking 4 hours into the ride. And you can get the products from The Feed and get expert help at, a really good price by going to thefeed.com/Leadville, register your email, verify your phone number, and then you get a $20 credit to use right away, and another 20 in another quarter, and keeps going.
Very nice, yeah. Hey, here's a saying I like to stick to when it comes to bikes and bike building: measure twice, cut once. That is an old adage when it comes to cutting anything bike-related: steer tube, seat post, flat bars. You want to make sure that you have it measured right before the saw comes out.
And that is why I have a professional do anything that involves cutting on my bicycles, because getting it wrong is a terrible and expensive mistake, especially when it comes to carbon components.
Totally agree. What you should know is that many of our Envy carbon components can be cut to size, in particular your handlebars. Envy intentionally shits them on the wide side, like the M5XE bar comes out of the box at 760 millimeters. That width is much more appropriate than what we were seeing a number of years ago when 800s were coming out. I mean, bars up to 800 mil wide, that was kind of happening for a bit. But even at 760, some of you might want to go a little narrower, and you can do that with the M5 bar or any of their bars. Envy says you can trim them down to 720 if you are on the small side or you want to get really narrow with your setup.
I like that you are saying trim, not cut. It sounds more delicate, more refined that way. But no matter how you say it, trim or cut, we know this can be a harrowing experience. Don't worry, Envy is okay with it as long as you stay within its spec. And remember, you can always have it done at an authorized dealer by a pro mechanic. To check out Envy's trimmable carbon components, it is enve.com.
All right, last episode we talked with the race director Tamara Genlink about the changes to the LT100 from corral to course to crewing. We are still processing what this means to racers and crews, but we have a few recommendations and questions we think are worth bringing up now.
Yeah, I kind of want to go from easy to complex with this, Hadi. Let's start with corrals. First of all, Brown 1 and Brown 2 are the new corrals that our listeners are going to need to care about. There's also a women's gold corral. If there are any women that we don't know about who are in the women's gold corral, please let us know. We'd love to talk with you at some point. These are self-seating corrals, so early bird gets a worm. And as we know, congestion can be a problem at the back of the race. So if you care about being in a place where Keevens isn't a little bit of a traffic jam, you may want to make sure that you get up, 15, 20 minutes earlier than you had planned.
And don't worry about the waves. They stay intact, even though we've kind of picked up a corral here. But they're going to send the pro men, that is, off a little early. So at least for the pro men, slightly earlier alarm clocks for them. But the rest of us, we got our normal times, which is great. Okay, let's transition to the course, which we also heard some little new alterations about, as we were told. Instead of continuing down the 300 and onto the 11, we're going to cut right through outward bound, kind of like the runners do now, which means, I think, something significant that, as Fatty and I talked about it, and that is, if you think about it, there's one less opportunity to eat. Before you could really gobble down something along that stretch of the 300 and then on the 11, but when you're hitting single track and possibly in a single file line through that single track, eating is going to be a little more difficult. So we're here to advise you. Keep that in mind. I mean, Fatty and his Fatty's finishing tip talked about practicing eating and how important that is. I mean, you want to visualize those eating spots too on the Leadville course and think about, I want to maybe get down a gel just before I hit that single track. So I'm not trying to reach for a bottle or a gel or anything while I'm trying to handle my bike. Fatty, something I've seen in particular too that the pros are doing, speaking of feeding and staying on time with feeding, is instead of writing down like split times on their stem and taping that to their stem, they're actually writing down little reminders on when they should be eating. So in addition to maybe like your alarm system, you can also go analog with that too. So instead of like writing down when I'm supposed to be at Twin Lakes or when I'm supposed to be at Pipeline, write down when you're supposed to eat and tape that to your top tube.
I do want to say that even with this new single track section, it is, as Tamara pointed out last episode, just 1 mile long. And so after you come out of the power line, you have some time on pavement that you can eat before you get on that single track. And then it is going to dump you back onto a wide road after that single track. So it is like Hadi says, you may not want to be eating on that single track, but you will have great opportunities both before and after that you can make sure that you stay on top of your nutrition.
So 1 mile in each direction, folks, of new dirt, which is what we have to look for. And I guess our friend of the pod, Ray Landry, is going to report back to us on what he finds out there. We're going to get a little recon for you, so he'll be able to tell us maybe a little bit about what's going on there.
Okay, I think that leaves us where we, at the complex part of this corral course and crew changes. Hottie, I think this is also where most of the conversation is going to happen. We've got a new aid station. We've got shuttle requirements to the most popular aid station. So there's a lot of C's here, courses, crews, corrals. That all causes a little bit of complexity and concern.
Yeah, I think one of the big things we're trying to figure out and do the math on here is how many people the shuttles can move per hour from Outward Bound to Twin Lakes Dam, and then how soon, what's the deadline, right? How soon do even the crews for the slowest riders need to be out there, and how soon for the faster riders? I mean, Fatty and I were kind of crunching the numbers. This is just in our head, folks, and we don't know this for sure. Tamara told us that they can move right about 700 to 750 people with a round trip of, for those buses at least, in the 45-minute range. So we're figuring an hour to give them enough padding there. So about 700 to 750 people per hour seems like a decent rough estimate here. And with the shuttle starting at 5, I mean, obviously those early shuttles will be the ones to get on. But Fatty and I were estimating how late could you get crew there and still service people? And we figured comfortably like 8:30 is the absolute latest you'd want to be delivering crew to Twin Lakes Dam. So, I think those numbers will kind of lead you to some answers about, how early you want to be at Outward Bound if you plan on using the shuttles, and maybe aiming for getting on those very first shuttles so you can get in place.
Yeah. If I were a crew person and I had a racer, the thing that I would be probably the most stressed about is that my racer got to Twin Lakes Dam before I did, because of, a shuttle traffic jam or a bus breaking down in the middle of the route, or there was just being such a long line. We don't know what is going to happen yet. We put out a question to Tamara saying, hey, can you tell us exactly how many buses there are going to be? Can you tell us what the round trip is going to look like? Give us a map, give us an idea. No, there is no way you can give us too much information. But what I would say is that if you have the same kind of concern, or your crew has the same kind of concern that we might have, that is, getting your crew to the dam before you get there, I would say maybe the recommendation is have your crew skip the starting line. People who get to the Outward Bound parking lot at 5 a.m., I would say can be highly confident that they are going to get to Twin Lakes Dam before any racer does. That means you're going to miss the starting line. I would say, the starting line, someone can share pictures. Hadi will share pictures with you. It is more important that you get to Twin Lakes Dam. I would say you have to do some prioritizing, and I think skipping the starting line might be the one that I would encourage my crew to do if I want them to go to Twin Lake Dam.
Yeah, the difficult thing here to try and figure out is how many people Lifetime plans on moving from Outward Bound to Twin Lakes Dam. If it's 1,500, right, 1,500, that seems doable in a time frame that gets everyone there, within that deadline that Fatty and I just mentioned. I mean, 8:30. I think that's no problem. If it's a lot more than that, though, if it's 3,000, that seems like I don't think we've ever seen 3,000 people at Twin Lakes Dam, but that number is probably not attainable, right? Based on the number of shuttles I have. So, like Fatty said, get up as early as you can if you're a crew member. You're probably getting up earlier than your racer at that point, and try to get down to Outward Bound and get on one of those earlier shuttles. I know it's a real pain, but hopefully the pain is just for this year, and then we can kind of flush this out and figure out how this system is going to work.
Yeah, in the 2025 race, we're going to be able to give a lot more clarity to our recommendations. For this year, we're being cautious. And I would say with that caution means, once again, early bird gets the worm, right? Be one of the first people in the line. Take the bus, be there early. And I would say that for crew also extends to getting your stuff to Twin Lake Dam the day before. Remember, at 2 p.m., you can drop off at Twin Lakes Dam your tent, your ice chest, your camp chairs, all of your stuff. And I expect there are going to be a lot of people who are driving out to Twin Lakes Dam the day before the race. There's going to be some traffic jamming. I think that is going to happen there. The way that you try to try to avoid that is by staying in front of it. So I would be on the road at 2 p.m. or before, so that I arrive at Twin Lakes Dam as close to 2 p.m. as possible. Chances are, be patient, have a full tank of gas, be sure you use the bathroom before you get on the road, because I can easily picture a traffic jam up of hundreds of cars as everyone tries on the day before the race to get to Twin Lakes Dam.
What else do we have? We also have the return trip, obviously, from from the dam back to Outward Bound. That's another one to, again, if you're trying to cover both, we said this during the interview too. Boy, that seems like a big ask to try and cover both the dam and Outward Bound with one crew, especially considering that we don't know kind of the flow of things going back. You may see people trying to put stuff on these shuttles as well, because they're going to allow maybe allow people to carry larger items back to Outward Bound. They're still trying to figure that out too. So that you think we have few answers about the morning rush. The afternoon rush seems to be even less harder to put our finger on right now.
I would say if you have your hotel or Airbnb or what have you, if you can come back to Leadville the next day, I believe there's going to be someone who is watching over stuff so that you can pick it up. The problem is, like me, like a lot of people, we're not staying in Leadville this year because there isn't space in Leadville for us to stay. We're staying in Breckenridge. So if I'm going to come back on Sunday to get my stuff out of Twin Lakes Dam, it means that another fairly involved drive. So it honestly, while we as podcasters would love to be able to give everyone good, firm recommendations, I'm not sure what they are. I think maybe if you can stick around till 6 p.m. and wait for the rush to subside, that you won't have as hard of a time going and picking up your stuff.
You got to think about what the traffic is going to be in the afternoon. You're going to have people right in the afternoon coming out of Twin Lakes Dam, whether that be shuttle or the few cars that are allowed to park down there. You're going to have people coming out of alternate as well, trying to drive back towards Leadville, correct? Then you're going to have people going the opposite way, possibly trying to go back to the dam to pick up their stuff, their larger items. So there's a potential for some traffic issues out there that maybe you want to avoid. I think that's what Fatty's saying here. Like, if you can spend the night and just go out there the next day and get it on Sunday, the only thing that's going on Sunday is the 10K, and you should be able to get out there, right? And no one's running that far to Twin Lakes Dam, so you should be good.
Yeah, in the evening after the race, after the 11th hour, 12th hour of the race is over, things are going to lighten up a little bit. It's not going to be as busy. Let's talk about the crewing options that we recommend for this year.
Well, first of all, we shouldn't let Twin Lakes Alternate go by the wayside, because that's a place you and I have enjoyed a lot. Look, it's still going to be there. Lost Canyon / Twin Lakes Alternate is there. Fatty and I figure there'll be more demand there. You're going to see more people out there. This kind of wink, no setup thing the night before sounds like they're going to crack down on that and make sure that people are not setting up the night before there. So that means you're probably going to just have to show up that morning and grab what you have and lay down a spot where you can, when you can. Again, I think the same applies as that here's to the folks who are going Outward Bound. You got to get out there early if you really want a premium spot. Not only for the spots themselves, but the parking down Lost Canyon Road, approaching the 24, it gets to be a very long line of cars that way. If you do drive and park on Lost Canyon, and want to get out of Lost Canyon too, once your day is done crewing there, I think one of the things we would advise you to do is park on the south side of Lost Canyon with your car facing eastbound back towards the 24, so you don't have to make a lot of crazy 3-point turns to try and get out of there.
Yeah, crew is having to be as strategic as the racers this year now, Audie. We're all having to think in terms of, what are our priorities? What matters most? You want to be facing so that you can get out. And I think probably once again, if you want to be there before it is too late and the lines are too long, you're probably going to have to prioritize getting to Twin Lakes alternate over being there for the race start, right?
You can start setting up at 6 in the morning. So getting there at 6, not a bad idea.
Yeah, and which means leaving the town of Leadville probably around 5:30. Maybe even a little bit earlier, right? So yeah, it's an early day for everyone. No one gets to sleep in. Okay, let's talk a little bit about where we recommend crews go and maybe some various strategies for different kinds of racers. Actually, one of the ones that was your idea that I found very intriguing is the go light strategy. So tell us about that.
Yeah, go light. I mean, you could just forego the whole day before setup and hassling with that, and just go light. I mean, just take your crew. If you have 4 people, everyone puts on a backpack, carries all the stuff that's needed, gets down to Outward Bound, gets on the shuttle, and flies down to Twin Lakes Dam and just cruise without the pop-ups and all the extras that we like to have, the niceties that we like to have in a crew location. This makes your crew, very, right? They can react. They can do things much quicker. When it's time to leave, they can get out. They can get back on a shuttle, back to Outward Bound. There's no going back to Twin Lakes Dam later to pick up large items, right? So you make your crew that is real nimble and go light and try it that way. The downside, of course, is your crew is going to have to deal with more sun possibly, right? They don't have the comfort and the shade of a pop-up and those other things I might need. I have seen people do it this way, though. I've watched people just do it with a backpack or, something light to carry all the stuff and then get the heck out of there. So go light would be one strategy. Go light and don't bother with the early setup.
Yeah. Maybe sort of presaging this idea a long, long time ago was Rebecca Rush's husband, who used to do the entirety of her crewing from his motorcycle. And, this is back when you could take a motorcycle, but everything he needed for her at every place, he just had with him on that motorcycle. And, you can't hold a lot of stuff there. So obviously he didn't have a pop-up. He didn't have a cooler. He didn't have a ton of every possible scenario clothing for her. But if you are setting up this sort of light, agile crewing approach, make sure that your racer does have stuff at the drop bags for Outward Bound and at Twin Lakes Dam. I'm still having to get used to saying Outward Bound. I still want to say Pipeline Hottie. It's going to take a while for me to get over that. But yeah, make sure that if you are using this agile approach to crewing, that you have additional stuff, your bad weather gear in the drop bags. And for the crew, if you are packing agile, make sure that you still have what you need for the extremes of weather that Leadville can turn out. That is, it can dump rain. Anyone who has been to Leadville for more than a week knows that you can get a very strong maybe winterish, but a real strong downpour. You can also get beaten down by sun that is not particularly hot, but can fry you to a crisp. So, you've got to be ready for everything. It just means you have to pick all the right things.
The one thing that the new changes don't discourage, in fact, may encourage, is something that Fatty and I have put into practice now for several years, and that is the zone defense. This is a great way to cover if you have the personnel to do it, if you have the people to spread around over the course. This is a great way to make sure that your racer does get serviced, and the likelihood of missing that racer is much lower by just spreading out. This is how Fatty and I have done it. We put somebody at Pipeline, we put somebody at Twin Lakes Alternate. In fact, we have somebody we know about at Twin Lakes Dam as well. And that way we don't have to move around as much. We dispatch people to those locations and they sit there all day and wait for racers to come to them as opposed to trying to hopscotch around. This is a totally doable format. You can do it in a number of ways now, especially now that Outward Bound has been instituted, right? You could do Twin Lakes alternate and Outward Bound. You could do dam and Outward Bound. You could do, right? You see all the possibilities here. Pipeline and alternate, pipeline and dam. There's a lot of ways to mix this thing up depending on the cars you have, right? And where you want your people to be and how spread out you want them to be. So I think it's a totally viable option. And, I know people like to group up together and you think, well, we have 4 people. We're going to put all 4 of them in this one location, but maybe give some consideration of doing 2 and 2, like 2 people at the dam and 2 people at Outward Bound, something like that. So maybe, kind of disperse your resources a little different.
And the reason we've always been able to do this zone defense approach is because we always have at least 2 racers and often 3. This year, we will have 3 racers in the family, Melissa, Lisa, and me, right? And we have you and Veronica coming. We have Melissa's fiance coming. We have my twin daughters coming. We have Blake coming. We have everyone coming, and it still comes out to less than 4 crew people per racer. And so, yeah, it works really well for us to scatter. Not everyone has that many relatives or friends coming. And for that reason, I would suggest make a friend. Find another racer who is approximately your same speed and get your crews together and do the zone defense approach that way. Have your family at Twin Lake Dam, have their family at Pipeline or Outward Bound, or any other variation like that where they are basically 15 miles apart. Exact a pact from both families that, hey, we're not going to ditch you, ditch the other racer just because ours has come through and is on their way to the finish line. You got to be committed to the other racer as well as your own. And then, go ahead and do that zone defense and you make sure that every racer that you are caring for gets the same level of care.
Okay, how about something that I'm surprised we've never brought this up before, maybe because, now that the changes are here, it's putting more pressure on us to think creatively about how we crew. But this idea could have worked before these changes, and that is a one-spot strategy. You put your crew at one location, and they sit there all day, and that location would be Pipeline. So, Pipeline, right? Just envision this. Your crew goes down to Pipeline, sets up camp. There's no restrictions down there. You can drive down there. They're not going to be checking wristbands. You sit there and you sit there all day, right? So your rider comes through in the morning. Should take them about 2 hours to get there. Then the round trip from Pipeline to Columbine and back is 46 and a half miles. There are 3 neutral aids along the way, right? So you could send a drop bag to at least Twin Lakes Dam. They don't go to the top of Columbine anymore. And the rider could see, right, 2 neutral aids with his stuff or her stuff in it on their way from Pipeline to Columbine and back, right? That's, again, about a 46 and a half mile trip. And arguably, Fatty, Pipeline inbound or outward inbound, as some people might call it now, that one, is the most important feed. Like that last stretch there is the toughest. It's the crux of the race. That's where you absolutely want to make sure you're fueled up and ready to go. I mean, we make a lot of hay about Twin Lakes Dam and Twin Lakes Alternate and being out there in the party. And yeah, that stuff is great. We agree it's great. But this is a way you could do it. You would avoid the shuttles this way, right? There's no shuttles. If you go to Pipeline, you can park there. It's kind of the way it always was. The only thing you're a little farther away from is that timing mat. So you got to keep that in mind. Like if you decide that you are going to stop at Pipeline inbound, whether or not you're doing this one-stop strategy, this one crew spot strategy. Remember, if you're at Pipeline, if you have somebody at Pipeline inbound and you're going to take a feed there, that timing mat is still ahead of you by like 15, 20 minutes. So don't waste a lot of time there, especially if you look down and you're close to a cutoff. So, but anyhow, yes, you could, in theory, send your crew to Pipeline and have them sit there all day. And they could likely see you off at the start line and you could get down the Pipeline and sit there all day.
Yeah, your crew could see you at the start line, at Pipeline outbound, Pipeline inbound, and then at the finish line. By doing that one-stop strategy, I mean, it requires a racer that is going to be very self-sufficient for quite a while, right? From mile 28 to mile 78, or somewhere around there, 75-ish. It is a long haul and includes, of course, the Columbine Mine climb, and which exacts its own toll. But yes, if I were going to put one person or a crew in one spot, that is where I would put them. And I think that's a very creative solution. Won't be for everyone. One other option, and this is mine, is the no crew crewing, I guess, where if you haven't already made your travel or flight plans and you are looking at this, and maybe you have young children or you have a lot of people who had something very particular in mind, including, camping out basically for the day on Twin Lakes Dam, and it just seems like this has become a hassle. Consider just using, saying, "Hey guys, go spend the day hanging out in Leadville, spend the day in Breckenridge, don't even make the trip out at all. I'm going to use neutral aid." I'm just putting that out there. I wonder if it's thousands, not thousands, but hundreds of people every year who do this race with no crew at all, and they are just fine between drop bags and the incredibly capable aid station support that is available in many places during this race. You never go more than 20 miles without having great aids available. You can be just fine with no crew whatsoever.
Yeah, I've raced with racers who've gone no crew, and they finished right alongside with me and a big buckle. It's totally doable to not have a crew. And there's hundreds of races across the country that do no crew. Like that's the way you survive it. Crews are fun. We don't want to ruin the fun. If that's your fun, if that's your jam, even the Leadville Race Series likes the idea of crews in the end, even though they're kind of imposing this new traffic situation on us. They do love the crews. They love our crews as well. But does it mean you have to have one? No, it doesn't. As Fatty said, you can do no crew, and it does work. And you will. If you can finish with a crew, you can finish without one.
Yep. And there is still a lot of people out there. And believe me, you will get your fair share, if not more than your fair share, of cheering as you cross each of those aid stations. I feel like Outward Bound is going to have a lot of presence. Twin Lakes Dam, obviously, Columbine, everyone gets a huge cheer. There is no mountain bike race in the world. And I say this with total confidence that there's no mountain bike race in the world that gets its racers as pumped up and feeling amazing as they go through these aid stations as the Leadville 100, a crew or no crew. Hadi, we are far from done with this conversation. I feel like we're going to learn more before the race, and of course, we are going to tell our listeners every single little thing that we learn. As our listeners can no doubt tell, we are just a touch obsessed with this race and everything about it. Anything that we know, anything we learn, anything we can find out, we will tell you.
All right, when it comes to the environment, riding bikes is pretty great. But what we are riding and wearing, sometimes that story is a little gray. Many bikes and clothing come from overseas, carbon manufacturing is not so green, and the end product is hard to recycle. So there are areas of the bike world that could use some cleaning up.
DNA recognizes this too, which is why they've put out a jersey called the Collective Collab Verde jersey. As DNA says, what once was your water bottle is now your jersey. The Collective Collab is made from recycled materials. In fact, the fabric is certified global standard recycled fabric. I don't know exactly what that means, but I do know that it is a good-looking jersey from DNA. The Collective Collab has the DNA four-way stretch, arrow fit, and a hidden zipper. All the things you would expect from DNA, and the design is a collage of bicycle components across the chest, back, and sleeves.
Yeah, great design and a great idea. The Collective Collab Verde jersey looks good, feels good, while feeling good about looking good. How about that? By the way, there's also a long sleeve collective collab jersey. That's what I would love. Check them out at dnacycling.com. Hey, we don't mean to pile on the changes with the show, but we want to let you know about a couple of others. The race series has new nutrition sponsors, and you will see some, if not all of them, on course.
One of the biggest is Scratch Labs, who will be part of the neutral feed zones. You've heard Dr. Alan Lim on the show before. He is back to tell us what he will be serving at Twin Lake Dam and Outward Bound, and he has some tips on hydration.
All right, Leadville listeners, back here at Sea Otter, and glad to run into a favorite guest of ours from last season, Dr. Alan Lim. Dr. Lim, your episode was well received, and some really terrific advice there about fueling and nutrition for the Leadville athlete. We're back with Dr. Lim because Scratch is now on board with the Trail 100 and with the race series as a sponsor. So I guess we'll be seeing a lot of Scratch in Leadville. Why did you decide to get involved with the event, first of all?
We decided to get involved in the event to help people, right? And to help others have the best experience that they could have at Leadville. It's in our backyard. It's always been a race that is near and dear to me. And so, as a Colorado-based company and with the products that we have, we know that we can help, and we're looking forward to being able to do so.
Yeah. Helping means you will be on course,
right,
which is great. So, especially for the people who rely on the neutral aid stations, which is plenty of them, yeah, what should they expect to see as they pull into those stations as far as Scratch?
When you pull into the Scratch Labs neutral aid section, you're going to see carbohydrate, water, and salt. And really, those are the three fundamental things that you need to get through a race like that. In terms of carbohydrate, we've got our sport drink mix, which is our standard sport, drink mix with a sodium level that is equivalent to the average salt loss in sweat. But if you need more salt, we'll also have our everyday drink mix, which allows you to increase the amount of sodium that you'll find in that drink, or something that you can drink alone if you just need a palate cleanser, but you are flavor fatigued, etc., right? You want something just to wash out your mouth, but you still want electrolyte. You're also going to find our high carb drink mix, which is a drink mix with a very, very complex carbohydrate that digests more like real food so that you can drink a ton of your calories. You can also adjust the sodium level of that with our everyday drink mix as well. You're going to find our chews, our bars, but most importantly, you're going to find our people who are the most caring, hospitable people, I think, in the industry. And they're going to be to support, cheer you on, and make sure that you have all of your needs met. So even if that's just an ice sock or something to cool you off or somewhere to sit, a little back rub, neck massage, come to the Scratch booth and we will take care of whatever it is you need.
Yeah, the everyday drink mix, I tried it for the first time here at Sea Otter. Interesting product. So the use of that product is you can add it on top of your regular sports drink if you are like a heavy, salty sweater.
That's right. So sodium sweat loss is one of the most genetically variable and phenotypically variable traits in the human species. It really speaks to this amazing relationship that we've had with salt across all of human history. Sodium sweat can vary anywhere from as little as 200 milligrams of sodium per liter all the way up to, say, 2,000. Now, if you don't lose a lot of salt, you're pretty lucky because you can, relatively speaking, drink plain water. But if you lose a lot of salt, you need to replace that in order for your thirst mechanism to appropriately hydrate you. Hydration, for the most part, when you're talking about thirst, during exercise, thirst likes to regulate the electrolyte balance. But since we're losing salt in our sweat, if you lose a liter of sweat, you don't need a drink, and your body won't let you drink a liter of plain water because there's not as much salt in the pool. And so if you're trying to regulate, and thirst is trying to regulate electrolyte balance, it will only allow you to, say, drink 2/3 of a liter if you lose 1,000 milligrams of sodium per liter, and your body's trying to keep the sodium concentration at, say, 3,500 or 3,000. So the only way to get your thirst mechanism to maintain electrolyte balance as well as water balance so you don't dehydrate is to make sure you replace the salt that you lose when you're exercising. Yeah. Our everyday drink mix allows people to begin to customize our drink mix, which we keep at the average for the population.
Yeah. how do you like to see athletes check and see how much salt, like how do we figure out how much salt we lose?
The simplest way to figure out how much salt you lose is if you weigh yourself before and after exercise and you find yourself losing more than 2 or 3% of your body weight, then instead of trying to force yourself to drink more the next day, take into account how much water and how much sodium you had on that ride and incrementally increase the salt intake until you get to a point where you're not dehydrating anymore. Okay. Let sodium intake drive how much you drink. Don't force yourself to drink more.
Of all the stuff you've studied and learned, has altitude informed anything that you believe or about salt and sodium losses, or hydration for that matter?
At altitude, you're going to have a greater insensible water loss, right? The barometric pressure is lower, and so the amount of literally atmosphere that is holding water in your body is decreased, and so we evaporate faster at altitude. You might find when you get up to altitude that it's also drier, that you're thirsty. You've got to respect that thirst and take care of yourself, right? Okay. Beyond that, altitude is beautiful, altitude is hard, and because of that as well, you might find yourself, relatively speaking, exerting more. But what you lose in terms of your sweat is also attribute of your temperature, your exercise intensity, many, many variable things. Again, you got to just be cautious. You got to take care of yourself. And when you come up to altitude, you got to start out a little slow, right? So don't be a hero. Take your time.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Lim, I also like to chew on something, eat something. Scratch will have, I imagine, chews and give a bar and so forth there?
We'll have bars. We'll probably also be cooking a bunch of food. So, we'll have bacon. We'll have little rice cakes from our cafe.
Oh, boy.
We'll have all sorts of little treats so that you can satiate whatever it is you're craving.
Yeah. All right, we'll look for the Scratch banners and Scratch personnel at the aid stations. Thanks again to Dr. Lim. The other nutrition partner on course will be Precision Hydration. Like Never Second, Precision has that easy-to-count carb system with fueling doled out in 30-gram increments. The Precision Hydration website is worth a look for more on its products and its thoughts on the science of fueling.
Finally, we have what might be a little bit of a surprise, and that is a new company with a relatively new approach to performance nutrition. Many of you have probably heard about ketones. Well, a new drink company, Kinetic, is now a Leadville Racers sponsor. We spoke with Kinetic co-founder Peter Bain about their drinks and their involvement with the Leadville Trail 100.
All right, Peter Bain is with us here at Sea Otter. Peter, Kinetic, a newish drink, I would think. Is this a new company?
This is very new. We've actually just launched the new formulation about 6 months ago. We're going into every single Lifetime gym across the country. We're selling through our website, and we're starting to get, and Amazon, of course, and then starting to get into some smaller, more boutique health stores, some bike stores, some running stores, and just growing with patience.
So you are also the title sponsor of the Leadville Trail 100 and maybe more of their events. I don't know, but tell us why you decided to get involved in the Leadville series.
Well, we're really excited to partner with Lifetime and started talking to them about how we can meet with their community and the best way to launch into that and find endurance athletes. So becoming a sponsor at the Lifetime Grand Prix was something that was brought in front of us. And so we asked, what's the best race? What's the one that's the toughest? And they immediately said Leadville, without a doubt. And we're like, well, that's the one where we want to be. That's where we will have a very tech-forward drink that's going to be able to help the athletes perform at their best. And so we really wanted to be a part of that.
Okay, so let's talk about the drink and how athletes, because they're going to see it in Leadville on course. So let's talk about how to use this product. There's a lot of kind of mystery around ketones. We've seen high-end athletes experiment with this. We've seen the little drink mix things that taste just terrible. Tell us how your drink is, first of all, tell us how your drink is different from those little bottles we used to see.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing we wanted to fix was the flavor problem. Most people are familiar with ketones, have tried other exogenous ketone products like ketone esters, and immediately they have a familiarity with nail polish remover or jet fuel, maybe mixed with some blueberry or something in there. It can be a little bit harsh. And so that was the first thing that we wanted to solve, was the flavor issue. So we found a way to create the bioidentical ketone molecule that you create in your body and put it in our drink, and to be able to make it taste good. We actually make it all from plants. It's made from sugarcane using a biofermentation process. We were able to get a patent on that. We were able to get a patent on our flavor innovation, and it actually performs just as well as the ester, if not better, but tastes so good even your kid will drink it.
Yeah. What are ketones doing for me?
Ketones do a lot of things, actually. So when you deplete all your glycogen stores and you're out of carbs, you have no more glucose in your body to turn into ATP, you start burning the fat you have stored up in free fatty acids. That converts into a ketone called BHB. And that actually will turn into ATP and requires less oxygen to turn into ATP. So it's a more efficient energy source. The cool thing about Kinetic is that you can use both carbs and ketones to fuel your race. And there's also a lot of other benefits along with that too. So we've seen besides just the energy for your muscles, that there's a big mental boost that happens when you fuel with ketones. A lot of researchers have done studies where they use PET scans to show that when both glucose and ketones are available, that your brain will absorb the ketones first. So it's the preferred fuel source of your brain. And we were kind of wondering, why do we feel this like mental boost? What's really happening? I just felt like I was able to get more done at work. I was more focused. So we did some EEG brain scan studies. We did a baseline scan, had 20 people drink Kinetic, and then rescan them all again. What we saw is that there was an 18% increase in brainwave activity, in particular around alpha waves and gamma waves. Alpha is around calmness and focus. So when you meditate, you actually increase your alpha brain waves. Gamma is around problem solving and spatial awareness. So when you combine calm, focused energy with spatial awareness and problem solving, it's really putting you mentally in the zone. So as a pre-performance drink, Kinetic is fantastic because it's putting your brain in the zone. You're feeling better about what's going to come at you. You're better at problem solving. Your brain's energized because we all know as soon as your brain quits on you, your muscles go next. And tricking your brain to keep working and keep believing in yourself is the name of the game.
Yeah. We often say on the show that you end up racing stupid at Leadville because of the elements and the effort involved. Okay, so let's talk about how somebody, and the altitude for sure. Let's talk about how an athlete, especially a Leadville athlete, might consider using Kinetic. First of all, there was a lot of discussion regarding ketones in the early days that, if you're going to do ketones, you had to get on a ketone diet or be in ketosis, blah, 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 right?
Yep.
So if somebody was interested, a Leadville athlete, interested in using your product or using ketones, in the run-up to Leadville, is there a protocol?
Yeah, absolutely. The beauty of the product is you don't have to be on a specialized diet. We have the end result of the keto diet or intermittent fasting in a can, so you get the benefits of it no matter what diet you're on. The real benefit in leading up to doing a training session with it, besides getting the extra energy so you can load up with carbs and put ketones on top of that, is it really helps with muscle recovery. Ketones activate the mTOR pathway, which helps with muscle resynthesis. So you're going to end up being less sore the next day and to be able to work your body a little bit harder because you're able to recover faster. You're also using less oxygen molecules when you're converting ketones into ATP at a cellular level, so it's a more efficient fuel. And when you're in an oxygen-deprived environment like you are 8,000 or 10,000 feet up, that makes a big difference. There's also been studies that show that ketones help people acclimate with an increase in altitude. So if people are fearing altitude sickness, there's been a lot of feedback that has said that using ketones can actually help alleviate those symptoms.
Okay, let's talk about then race morning. What's the protocol then? Do I drink a can or what do I do?
Yeah, pre-race, an hour before the race, I would definitely have at least one dose, and depending if you're acclimated to ketones and you're familiar with it, I wouldn't want you to try it for the first time pre-race, of course, but that's going to mentally get you prepared. You're going to feel really good. Your mind's going to be focused. You're going to be ready to tackle the task at hand. So I think as a pre-performance drink, whether that's climbing up a mountain or giving a presentation in a boardroom, it's an amazing drink for that.
And I can do it with my normal breakfast coffee,
100%.
Rice and eggs, all that.
Absolutely. Any diet you're on, there's nothing you have to do. You're just adding ketones to it.
Okay. Now, I'm on course and I'm racing. What do I do during the race with ketones and with your drink?
Yeah, I would recommend that you have the Kinetic concentrate. and that your team is filling up your water bottle with that. So as you're riding throughout the course and you're hydrating, you're getting the energy boost of ketones in there, as well as you can mix it with any other carb supplement that you have in your water as well.
Or if I come to a pit stop on my cruise there, if they've got a can ready and open, or if it's a neutral aid, go ahead and just chug it down.
Yeah, we're going to be at several of the neutral aid stations, probably all of them. I don't think it's been all completely inked just yet, but we're going to have cans of the ready-to-drink Kinetic. They'll be nice and cold and chilled down there. We'll also have concentrate available too, so if somebody needs to put a shot and add it to their water bottle, we'll be there with that ready to go.
Cool. All right, well, we'll look for you and your drinks at Leadville. How would we describe this? A big bold, the spelling, right? It's a unique spelling.
Yes, well, everything needs to be trademarked these days and protected. So we had to get, we always wanted to figure out how do we talk about turning potential energy into kinetic energy. And that's why we came up with the brand Kinetic. So it is spelled Kenetik, but it'll stand out there. You're going to see it across the finish line when you finish there. Sure. So,
and that last K is a backwards K. That's how you can really tell.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. And then it'll also be memorable because it's so delicious compared to every other ketone you've ever tried in your life.
Awesome. Well, thanks for explaining the product to us, and we'll see you at Leadville.
We're excited to be there. Looking forward to meeting everybody.
Hadi and I have been through a 4-pack each, and I gotta say, Kinetic has solved the ketone flavor problems. They don't taste like Windex, which is a nice change. Some of the original supplements were downright awful, but Kinetics are more akin to a flavored bubbly water.
You can get started on the products that will be at Neutral Aid. All the stuff you heard about, plus Precision Hydration, is available at The Feed. thefeed.com/Leadville. You get an $80 annual credit when you register your email and verify your phone number, then spend your first feed credit of $20 right away. Yeah, those drinks, the Kinetics, they actually taste good. I can't tell for sure if they did anything, but I had no problem drinking them.
I like them.
All of what you heard on this show can be hashed out on our Slack channel, leadville.fm/Slack. Our full catalog of shows has a similar address. It's leadville.fm.
Good luck in your Leadville pedaling, all of your planning. Thanks so much for listening, and we're going to see you real soon at the starting line.